Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
A guest star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see that Putin's the lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the name.
Hello everyone and welcome one and all to PSGL PC F4. We're back once again. We're back. This time we are here for Suzuka. How do you feel about this track, mate? I know you were going around it a little bit earlier, in fact. So what's your opinions? Of course, joined in the commentary box by none other than Miff Sky. You'll have to excuse the mild technical issues. There are some internet issues I'm currently experiencing, but that hopefully shouldn't persist when we get to the race. Anyway, yes, Suzuka. I think that, as you said, it is pretty much an icon. It's up there. It's one of those staples of automotive history, not just in the East, but just all around the world. It's been used for all manner of motorsport event over the years. It's got iconic sections, real test of driver skill. You've got the S-curves, you've got 130R, of course, main characteristics of the circuit, along with being the only track on the calendar that has a bridge crossover, technically. So that's an interesting little tidbit, but I guess we need to review where we currently stand heading into this iconic race. So for those who missed it, we did have the second half of our calendar being officially announced, and we are, of course, here with round 6 of Suzuka, but then round 7 we're going to be heading to Imola before heading over to Spa-Francorchamps, Jeddah in round 9, and then Mexico for round 10. But as you may notice in just a second, after we talked about our driver standings, 10 races is not the end of the season, folks. So to round off where we were last time out, of course, we managed to have a talk with Alexander Dimas in the Red Bull, who did provisionally win the race, but unfortunately, post penalties from the race, in lap 35 they did receive a penalty and 5 seconds added to their race time, so they did in the end get demoted down to P6. Andrew Carapi is going to inherit the win of the race, with Milan Meyer taking second and Leo Lund taking third position. And such as the nature of the leagues, unfortunately, we do have situations like this where we may have a winner of a race and they do get demoted after the fact. So we would like to stress, and always do stress, that in the race, the results, as strong as they are still provisional. They will still be subject to stewards' penalties by the reports raised by our drivers and by anyone else who was watching the action, and that will then in turn affect the race results. But there you go. So Andrew Crappy going to be very happy with himself, so he's going to inherit a win. I think as we head over to the driver standings as well, that is in fact, yes, that is the first win on his record, and that's going to pump him up to 4th place in the standings, with Milan Maya is going to be in the top spot currently. Dimas with that penalty getting demoted down and unfortunately not clinching that top spot like they otherwise aimed for. Interestingly, positions 1 and 2 in the Drivers' Championship, and I've just noticed this, they haven't got a single race win to their name.
They indeed have not got a single win yet. Well, of course, Alexander Dimas would have had one if it wasn't for the post-race penalties that were applied. But we can see by far that these drivers are the most consistent of all. Milan Meyer picking up 3 podiums in total. Alexander Dimas also picking up 2 podiums. Andrew Karapi also doing really well after not being there for the first 2 rounds, and then a 2nd, a 5th in the first place. So he's been doing quite well. And of course, we don't have to count out Lillian either. Lillian currently in 5th position. Did not start for the round in Austria. Will also not be here tonight for race in Suzuka. But after that, we'll resume again. So perhaps they can also come back a little bit more in the standings because of that. But I believe Andrew Karapi also actually came from quite far away last race, because didn't he start somewhere in the midfield and ended up getting the win?
Yeah, so
it's
actually
like P14 I think, something, right?
Yeah, so in the session, I believe he was in, yes, so he was P10 in qualifying, then eventually worked his way up to P2, and then of course inherited the win. So he did work from very far down the field, in my opinion, and really made a good name for himself in that whole situation. P4 in the standings with 3 races is no small feat. And when you consider the fact that 2 of those 3 races have been either on the podium or at the top step, so a 2nd and a 1st, and then his 3rd race in that being a 5th, no surprise why he's so high on the standings, even though one would think that with missing 2 races, that especially with a 12 race season, it would be what almost feels like a death nail to a championship effort, but doesn't seem to be the case here. You've got 2 schools of thought. You've got a small area of high performance, and then you've got likes of Milan Meyer and Alexander Dimas, who P1 and P2 haven't got a win to their name, but they've got consistent high points. I mean, look at Meyer's record. 2 second places, a 3rd place, and a 4th place. That is still consistent points, high points in and out, and that is going to slowly add up, as we've seen here. Even after all of that, he has got a fairly solid lead. The only person who can really challenge it right now, I would say, is Dimas, because Santa Maria is just out of shot considering the average performance of these guys at the top.
Yeah, at this point they're 8 points behind, so that, yeah, it's about half a race. Of course, the most amount of points you can win is 16, not adding the extra point they could potentially get for the fastest lap. And that fastest lap, I think, did go to Alexander Dimas last race. So he did at least pick up an extra point with that. What's also very interesting to see is that the McLaren pairing has scored a lot of points last race, so a 2nd and a 3rd place. And if we move over to our constructor standings, we see that McLaren is now safely at the top step with those good results on the Austrian Grand Prix at Spielberg. They're now ahead at 61 points, leading 12 points on Aston Martin, who I believe were leading up until last race. And for Aston Martin, we're missing one of the main drivers this week, Simone Violo, not attending this week. We'll be back again next week for Imola. So it will be up to Ivan Santamaria and perhaps a reserve driver to get as far as possible.
Yeah, so the constructors is a little bit of a different ball game because reserves don't really factor in. because reserves may jump in, but you do still, at the end of the day, so constructors, I believe, is solely down to the drivers who originally enlisted. Either way, the reserves, some of these reserve drivers, if we just jump back to the driver standings, I would say they have been at times, like, it's not uncommon to see a reserve driver really, like, come in and just smash the entire field. You've seen it in the past, I've seen it all around, is that even if they're not on the mainline roster, in air quotes, because quite often, a lot of these drivers, the only reason they are put on reserve is time commitments. This is a league that's run by community, for community, and you don't always get the opportunity, in everyone's case, to say, hey, I can make it week in, week out. Sometimes things happen. But it's still, like, the reserve drivers, there really is, like, a massive pool of talent here. And I'd say F4 is one of the best places to catch it, because that and maybe our F3 tier is kind of where you sort of cross over from the more, I wouldn't say casual, but I would certainly say that you start to cross over from the just sort of being a skilled player, being a good player, into the proper, okay, this is potentially esports territory now. This is where you get to start seeing that happening, and as you get to F2 and then later see F1 being the top dogs, it's really interesting to see that sort of progression.
Yeah, especially if we look at the results from last race, with one of the reserve drivers, Kokeni Thomas, getting his first 3 points with that eighth place position, which could have been a whole lot more if it wasn't for the penalties he picked up, I believe, for track limits during the race. But he actually did really well, especially just in the main race, just getting good strategies, driving consistent lap times, and really battling with the main guys who were also battling for the lead. He did have to let those go, but it shows that he's in quite close contention with them. And the qualifying, not all too far away, but still picking up 3 points. And yeah, I mean, he did quite well. He gave us a good showing.
Yeah, I think the track limits and the penalties is really what undid a lot of our drivers' races last time out. It was certainly a struggle for some of them, being able to sort of navigate the limit. Also, just a moment before we get into the race, folks, just to let you know that we are slightly delayed getting in. We are remaking the lobby due to an issue that has arisen. But getting back onto topic, the track limits are certainly something that everyone needs to watch out for. And it was through Suzuka, as I think I'll probably hand this over to you, Myth, as we start to look at the track. Suzuka's a unique beast.
It definitely is. So I'll first give you some general information on the track before looking at the key areas for track limits. So today we'll be driving at the Suzuka International Racing Course, track with 18 corners, spanning 5.8 kilometers or 3.6 miles. The track is currently operated by Honda, also commissioned to have the track built back in the 50s. Race lap record held by Lewis Hamilton, driven in 2019, I believe, 130.983, although we'll definitely see faster times in qualifying today. Has some of the most iconic corners in the whole calendar, as I'm going to take you through them. Of course, the S-curve, turns 3 to 6. Now we have Dunlop curve, turn 7, where we unfortunately had that fateful accident in 2014 with the late Jules Bianchi. Then we go on to Degner curves, 8 and 9, towards the hairpin. After that, the straight, even though it's not really a corner there, turn 12, it's still called the 200R. So we head into Spoon, turns 13, 14, very iconic corners, and together with Degner, the key areas for the drivers to look at in terms of track limits. Then we go on to the backstretch, followed by the 130R. Used to be a lot more tricky to navigate through that corner. Nowadays, it's just easy flat out. And then finally, we head to the Casio Triangle, the final chicane, before heading back to the start-finish line. For pits, if anyone, well, of course, we'll have to make some pit stops. The pit time loss is about 18 seconds, so it's not all too much. The track itself, 66% full throttle. And yeah, one of the key areas to look at for overtakes, of course, into turn 1, slightly more risky, but I think we'll see a lot of overtakes, attempts at least, towards the Casio Triangle, and who can of course forget that iconic overtake moment between Senna and Prost in 1989.
So iconic tracks, they steeped in history. You have 130R, a little bit of a math nerd fact. That's technically just a fancier way of saying that it's got a radius of 130 meters. So if you took the same curvature of the corner, drew it into a circle, it'd be 130 meters in its radius. And then turn 12 is technically, 200R, so 200 meters. But more you know, I'm sure that the only 200 that these drivers want to see is miles per hour as we go through some of this track. And we should be just a few moments away from getting into the lobby, folks. So let us know in the chat who, if anyone, you are particularly rooting for, or maybe anyone you have certainly got your eyes on as we head into this. What about you, Myth? Is there anyone in particular, as we're going to head into qualifying in a minute, you think that we should keep an eye on heading into Suzuka?
Well, I think if we look at the last race, a couple of drivers were very, very close during qualifying. I think Riot's Progress had a really unfortunate race, so maybe we'll see him come closer during qualifying. But I think overall, Andrew Karapi, our race winner from last week, very strong in the race. Perhaps a little bit less in qualifying, but I think the main battle, I think it's still for Alexander Dimas. He was very, very fast in quali. So if his performance is any similar to what he could show us in Austria or in for some very good runs by him, and of course our current Drivers' Championship leader Milan Meyer should get very close into those qualifying times as well. Any outsiders? If we look down the list a little bit more, perhaps Jeremy and Cornedebakker from Ferrari that can get a little bit closer into qualifying. But I think there's a good 4, 5, maybe 6 drivers, if we look at the results from last week at least, that can get very close to that top step and likely take pole position as well.
Yeah, as I say, so a few different drivers to keep our eye on, and perfect timing too, as we are about to jump into the session here, folks. So let's get ready, because it's round 6 of PSGL season 34. Round 6 of 12, technically a halfway point. Those eagle-eyed viewers would have spotted the 11 and 12 slots, currently yet unfilled, undecided in terms of track. So I'm sure there's some speculation. Of course, we did remove Las Vegas. I wonder if it will see a return. Couple of the reports that I heard were that it wasn't all that raceable.
Yeah, I've tried to drive it a couple of times, but I think the biggest issue with the track of Las Vegas, it's very, very hard to judge where your braking points are. There's no visual clues that you can easily find there. So hard with braking, also extremely long straights, which in my opinion don't really make sense. So hopefully we'll get some of the more iconic tracks. I mean, let's be real, we're missing Monza here. There's no Barcelona either. Maybe a bit cheeky, go for Azerbaijan or Australia, or have the season finale in Abu Dhabi. Circuit of the Americas. There's actually no track in the States yet, so perhaps we should get the Circuit of the Americas. I think that would be fair.
I mean, my ideal too would be a little bit unorthodox, but it would personally be Azerbaijan, followed by Circuit of the Americas finale. Purely because I think that, well, we're not bound by the real world calendar. We don't have to finish at Abu Dhabi. The reason it finishes at Abu Dhabi is per agreement. Because before that, it was Brazil. And then it was like iconic hijinks ensued. So, for me, Azerbaijan, because I think it's probably, I rate it as the best street race on the calendar. By a baker's mile. And then you have Circuit of the Americas. You one, get some states representation, and 2, you get, well, just a good all-round fun circuit. It's got some echoes of all different kinds of terrain, or not terrain, but types of corners. And uphill turn 1 always produces some fun. Certainly a bit of spectacle. And a really good track to round off on.
Yeah, I think that would be good for the season finale. Perhaps round 11, maybe slot in Australia so that we have a race there as well. But yeah, apart from that, there's so many nice tracks to still pick with Monza. You mentioned Azerbaijan. I think Spain could be up in the equation as well. The rest, the other track, maybe even Canada. But I think my favorites would be Australia and yeah, Circuit de Americas. I think that would be fair.
It's kind of tough because we're still left with, I'd say, about 5 or 6 good, like really good choices for end of calendar. But we'd love to hear people's speculation on what's going to come at the end of the calendar. But the time's not for that now, because we've got Marek Zamorowski about to cross for the outlap and make the first run out here on track. So let's hop on board with them as we see what they can do. Turns 1, 2, very nice. Turns 3 and 6. Now this section all about rhythm. You set yourself up as best as you can. You commit to the corner, and then you have to pull out just the right time in order to get the perfect arc into the following corner. Left, right, left, right. That's what you want. Marek looks to have done that pretty well into the Degners now under the bridge. This thing's looking like an absolute rocket compared to last time I was looking at this track. I was watching GT3 cars go around it, and let me tell you, compared to that, these things look like absolute spaceships.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how the drivers are going to do. In the meantime, it would be amazing if you could just quickly send me over an invite, because I haven't been invited to the lobby yet. Then I'll join you in the commentary box. Otherwise, I think it's going to be very, very tricky for me to follow all the live action. And then we'll see what our first flyer is going to be, what the benchmark will be, and how quick the drivers are going to go around. What kind of lap times are expecting? I think we can get into the 126 mids, maybe a little bit higher. So yesterday the full time was a 125.4, I believe.
Well, I'll say we just had our initial answer. Sven Schumacher just dethroned Marek Zamorowski. 126.047. That's the initial benchmark. Harry just came across the line along with Aleda as well. Jeremy's going to be coming through. That's going to be Andrew Crappy next. 126.2. Going to put themselves in 4th position. Got the other AlphaTauri of Linhart next, who is going to be in P4. And then it looks like a couple of invalidations coming here and there. Who's going to be next across? I believe that is going to be Leo Lund. Nope, he's got an invalidation. So
yeah, must have been around Spoon then.
Yep, so we've got a few drivers coming through. Silly Sly Guy, 126.265. It's going to be 5th position. No time posted for the Aston Martin, but Alexander Dimas going to be the first driver in this session to cross into the 125s with a .969. So we're already breaking that convention, and we're going to see maybe a few more drivers give it a go as Milan Meyer goes P10, and the second Aston Martin not going to be setting a time.
Okay, try again. In the meantime, I don't think the game would want to load me in fully, so still struggling here a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Let's just get you in. There we are. So drivers have completed their first runs. We've seen about half and half on the field. We've got Berlin Elekes, who is, I think, starting or is on a run now. What are they? Doesn't actually no. It doesn't. It looks like they go very slow, despite the telemetry readout displaying full acceleration.
In the meantime, let me just try some other things, because I don't seem to be getting in.
Looks like Gune is not going to be setting a time this lap. Looks like they are going to be coming through. Are they impeding though? It looks like they may have impeded. No, actually no, I think we're fine. Looking around the rest of the field, we've got Royard Sprogis now, who's on a run. One of the few drivers who has yet, in fact, to set a time. So we have a few runners. If Santa Maria is going to come through, it's going to be 126.4. So he's going to be putting himself in 10th position. We'll be keeping an eye on this Haas now as he's going to come through the last chicane here. full commit to the corner. Get the tail in. Tight to the inside. That's going to be 126.2. That's good enough for P5. So good job there from the Haas. And now everyone is back in the pits for what is about to be their second run. Marek's going to be the first one to head out of this second wave once again.
All right, let's try one more time then. Third time's the charm, hopefully. Just restart it, so hopefully I should be able to get in now.
Okay. Initial runs. I think the safe time to predict, we want to be getting a 126 flat. That looks to be around the cusp. And it looks like we are going to be seeing a few drivers making some improvements over the course of the session. Well, at least one can hope, right?
Yeah, I wish I could see. I'm not sure what exactly is going on, but it doesn't seem like I'm able to get in.
Let's say apologies for the technical issues, folks. Just trying to get a CoCom in to the lobby. New drivers about to go. But yeah, interestingly, we've got a few drivers who invalidated on their previous runs. And even when they went out for a second go, alright, folks, here we go. So Marek Zamorowski going to be going for another run here out at Suzuka. So if I was Marek right now, what time would I be aiming for, do you think? Would I be aiming for, say, maybe just to cross the 125s, or would I be looking to absolutely smash it, like 0.8s? What do you think we should, what do you think we should predict? Looking very clean so far through the S-curves.
I think if we look at the time so far, at least what I can see in the image from you, I think we should be aiming at like 126.1, 126.2 if you want to make it through to the next session. A couple of good benchmarks. Expecting a little bit more from Milan Meyer here. Perhaps he can get up a little bit higher. But yeah, some very good lap times by Alexander Dimas and Sven Schumacher so far.
Yeah, so in Marek's case, because we're on board with him right now, we do have him currently sat at a 0.083, 126. Oh, that could be a Mercedes getting in his way. Luckily, he does get out of the way in time. I believe that was Karapi. Thing is, if he messes up this lap, he is slightly up on his delta. He's half a tenth up on the delta. Even if he messes up this lap, he's in pretty safe standing because he's got that 126 flat. So currently P3, and in fact he does look to be abandoning despite what looked like a good run. Maybe he just overshot the last chicane a little bit. And we can see a few other drivers who are coming through, namely Sven Schumacher, who's on that same collision course. He has lost time in the second sector, so he went from 1.5 tenths up to half a tenth down. I wonder if this is also going to be an abandon from the Alfa Romeo driver. Nope, looks like he's going to be staying out. He's going to be committing to the run. Unfortunately, is not going to improve. Like at this point, if I was sitting P1, P2, P3, what would you do? Would you sort of like tone it down a little bit, knowing that I've got a bit of a safe position, or would you keep pushing, go a little bit risky?
I think at this point, I mean, we do have the one-time quali, so you do want to be quite up there. I think it might be good to go for, considering the race, I would still go for 3-time laps. I mean, you have the time for it, so you should always try to improve. But indeed, if it doesn't look like you're going to improve, just head straight into the pits and don't waste too much time. We'll always give you some extra time and just give you some extra time to relax as well. But especially the drivers now up in the top 4 or 5 positions, I think they should be pretty comfortable. They already have a nice banker in, and hopefully they can continue.
So, well, we had some amazing laps just come through here. So we had Alexander Dimas with a 125.7. So completely smashing out that sort of previous benchmark that they had. They really put themselves in good stead there. We had Silly Sly Guy, who came through 125.993, so broke into the magic 25s by just 7 milliseconds. You have Harry with a .040 as well, who just displaced Sven Schumacher down to 4th, where his previous run did not improve. You also had Leo Lund, I think, make an improvement up to P7, and then we've got a few more drivers who are out on track right now, looking to get those key improvements in. So you keep an eye eagerly on the timesheets, as Ben Marples is going to be the next one through with a healthy improvement. Lindhart is not going to be on a run here, I don't believe. Neither is Crappy. They're going to, in fact, be setting up for a next run with Une. But yeah, everyone's heading once again back into the pits, interestingly enough. Well, I haven't got that much left in
Let's try one more time.
So everyone's sort of headed into the pits once again. We do have a few drivers that have made some improvements, but crucially, just looking around, Corne de Backer has not set a time yet. Only driver yet to set a time.
Has he been out already, though? Has he been out on track already? Or did he invalidate? Or has he just not gone out for a single run yet?
Not sure. Not one that I can necessarily tell. As it does seem to be that he may have... I think he did invalidate earlier. But just, yeah, hasn't made a return run. We've got a few drivers out now. Still on track on their cooldown laps. We've got 3.5 minutes left in quali. So as it stands, it's like Alexander Dimas and Ryard Sprogis with a sort of surprise jump to a 125.986 are going to be taking the front row. Silly Sly Guy and Harry, P3 and 4, with Sven Schumacher, Sixten Linhart, Marek Zimorowski, Leo Lund, Ben Marples, Andrew Karapi, Violent Elekes, Nicola Leder, Jeremy, Milan Meyer, Noel Coleman, Arda Gune, Remek Hubats, and Santa Maria and Corne de Backer down at the bottom end. Everyone is in the pits now, except Leo Lund, who's just come out. So while doing that, I will quickly update you.
Yeah, it looks like quite a comfortable gap that Alexander Dimas is at the moment. About 0.2 of a second. That is quite a lot, and I think that might be very, very difficult to overcome. And if we look at Milan Meyer, still has to improve to at least put him up into championship contention, because as you can see, his closest competitor currently on P1, he himself finds himself in this 14th position with, well, perhaps one more run to go for him. Meanwhile, Harry, one of the reserve drivers, currently putting himself in 4th, doing really, really well there. And Silly Sly Guy also with a very solid lap. And Ryard Sprok is quite up there, as we predicted earlier on. But hopefully we can still see a bit more from a couple of the drivers, as well as Andrew Karapi.
Yeah, so curiously, Dimas has gone back out, but part of me wonders, and I see this sometimes, is that I'm not sure whether it's sort of bragging rights at that point, or whether you are worried that someone's going to sort of spring it up and take it from you. But with such a massive gap to the rest of the field, part of me, like, call it cocky, but if I was in Dimas' shoes, I'd be debating whether I'd even need to go out again.
I mean, you will always want to try, and I think the main question for him is, were there areas of improvement? If you think there are, you should definitely go out. If you think this was the perfect lap, although I think we can all argue the perfect lap does not exist, then I would stay in. Even though the gap seems comfortable, why not go for another try if you think you can make more out of it?
Yeah, so going for another try, he will, it seems. Leo Lund on board with now, as we are going to be carefully watching progress, carefully watching him as we head through to what will be likely the final lap for these guys here in qualifying. We're in the final 30 seconds now, so everyone is out. This is do or die. Through the curbs, very nicely done for the McLaren, but oh, it's a backward swing. He's going to go for a 360. Interesting choice of line. He is going to go into the gravel trap, and unfortunately that is going to be his charge over here in Suzuka. We're going to hop on board instead with Harry, who looks to be a 10th up on his previous best sector. Seriously, I can never get over like almost what looks like the sliding rear end of these cars through some of the tighter corners. I can never get over that. It looks odd. But then again, like you look at, say, like Trackmania. I know it's not the best point of comparison, say, going from arcade to simulator type, but there is a lot of weird movement tech in that game as well that kind of defies comprehension. So if there's a tiny little bit of tail slide to get a better rotation through the corners, so be it. But here you go, Harry, final chicane now, brilliantly done. Held the line really well. A little bit of a snap coming out the final corner though. Is he going to get an improvement? No. It is going to be a 126.040 still. And you've got the final few drivers coming through now. So is there going to be an improvement? Jeremy jumps up to P2. 0.954, brilliantly done there from the AlphaTauri. Final sets of drivers coming here through. Balint Lekas, no improvement. Sven Schumacher, 0.816. Another great run from him. It's going to slot himself in the second row provisionally. No one is going to make any massive improvements. Nicola Leda is going to jump up to P9. You've got the two Aston Martins in P12 and 14. Cornet not going to be having a time on the board. Alexander Dimas making another improvement. A silly Sly Guy goes with a 0.789. So the front row has jumped around massively. And this is it. This is quali, folks. Alexander Dimas, 125.745. So even better run than they had prior. And
that's pretty much as we said. I mean, you can always go for a third lap if you think there's something more to gain, and even though it's marginal and your other lap was enough for pole, it's still nice to improve a little bit more. And just to show your competition, I do have that slight edge over you guys. Come and get me.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if the lobby is going to be restarted, because I just saw flash up on the screen that Sly Guy was getting penalties for blocking, even though Wally has technically finished. Like, everyone has completed their laps, and the host is being migrated. So, not really sure what's happening, but I'll check in with the racers, with the drivers, and see what's going on. So it may potentially be, if their grid has broken as a result, we may potentially have a restart of the lobby, which will of course take us out of the action for a few minutes. But we will be right back in.
In the meantime, let me get the list that you sent to me of the standings, at least the results of the qualifying, so we can at least quickly go over them. So it's pole position for Alexander Dimas. Second place goes to Silly Sly Guy. Second row, Sven Schumacher and Jeremy. Row 3, Ruud Sprogis and Harry the Alpine. Seventh place goes to Sixen Linhart in the AlphaTauri together with Marek Znaborowski. And rounding off the top 10 are Nico Aleda and Leo Lund. P11, the Red Bull of Ben Marples, joined with Arda Gunne in the Aston Martin. Then we have Andrew Karapi and Ivan Santamaria in 13th and 14th. Although these two drivers are in our top 5 of the constructor or the driver standings. Then we have Balinalakis and Milan Meyer only in 16th, bit unfortunate for him. As rounding off the sheets are Plesmek Hubats, Noel Carmen, and Kone de Bakker in 19th.
And that is our quali, folks. So we are going to be restarting the lobby, and we'll be back in just a minute after a word from our sponsor.
Request to
All right, folks, we are back. So thank you for your patience. And of course, we have great partners here at PSGL, like GT Omega, for example. Use code PSGL, healthy discount at checkout. And as a reminder of the driver standings before we get into this and what is at stake. So Dimas kind of has a little bit of a redemption arc in mind, I think, for this race, because they got the win last time out, which then got taken away because of a penalty. So they want to get a win on the books, on the merits. So they are going to be out and out for a vengeance. We saw that with their brilliant quali performance, that 0.745. And then you've got a few other drivers on the grid who look to be challenging that reign. So Harry, excellent job in qualifying as well. You had Silly Sly Guy, who is in the mid-pack of the championship right now, but really looks like they intend to punch above their current standing and make some moves up in the competitive field. Leo Lund was on a good run, but unfortunately we did see the spin from them, so they will look to charge forward. And interestingly, Cornet is going to be starting from the back of the grid, having not set a time on the board whatsoever. And I kind of think even if you get like a 132 or something much slower than the rest of the field, at least have something on the board. Because the psychological effects of that, having that safety net, can't be understated.
Yeah, perhaps not, and I think it's also fortunate that we don't have, was it a 107% rule? I mean, I haven't heard about it in ages, at least not in this this calendar year of F123. But it's a 107% rule, right? Is it 108? It's 107, right?
It's 107, 107%
Yeah.
rule.
Yeah, just to explain to the viewers what this is a rule that was instated to make sure that the drivers are competitive enough. So you have to be within 107% of the pole lap time. If you are, then you're able to partake in the race. If not, then you're not allowed to go in. Sometimes it happens that your lap in quali does not fall within the 107%, and then they're going to look at free practice. But of course, such a thing does not exist here in F1 esports, and I don't think we would need that either, because these drivers are very, very closely linked to each other. As we could see, all the lap times are well within a second, and that for a lap that is about 125, 126. That is pretty impressive. That shows how close the competition really is.
Something Nikita Mazepin. But we're looking at the field. Yeah, it's especially at the top end and in the mid-pack too. You often see 4, 5, 6 drivers all within a tenth or a couple of tenths of each other. Crazy, the amount of parity as well as pace. And I get that it's helped by having the segmented leagues and the way we do at PSGL and around the F1 esports scene, but the amount of drivers that are able to run to that level. And of course it trails off as you get to the higher tiers, as less drivers are able to make it to that caliber. But you do see that with this sort of segmented style, one, we don't need the 107% rule. Two, it's always great fun. It's always great racing. Everyone's running so tight and close to each other that it is really great. One. Words. Why are words so difficult for me? But it's great spectating. and great stuff. All what we want to see in a league like this. So hopefully we are all good in the lobby. Hopefully you're in as well.
Yeah, I am indeed. Thankfully, one of the drivers was able to invite me, so that helps a lot. So that should do enough. Hopefully, I won't have to rejoin or play with anything with any settings for now. So I can just enjoy the race. The race took 27 laps, just so you guys know. So we're a half distance there. What I did not mention earlier on is that there is one DRS zone, which we will find at the pit straight. So overtaking mostly will be done into turn 1, perhaps into the hairpin, turn 11, and there still is an opportunity at the casino triangle. So the last chicane, turn 16. Other corners will be very, very hard to overtake and perhaps too risky as well.
Yeah, so those key overtaking opportunities you don't get to see, like in maybe some other circuits. We do see a little bit of metagame with things like DRS zones, but here I think that this is probably one of the, well, I call it purest racing tracks on the calendar, as in the DRS zones exist, they help, but wheel-to-wheel racing, it doesn't get much better than this track in my opinion. It's less reliant on DRS, less reliant on metagame strategy, and it's more just reliant on your ability to go wheel to wheel, your ability to hold space and defend properly. It is a proper driving test.
It definitely is, and as we mentioned before the race, what the most important thing here is just staying within the flow. If you can keep the flow through the S's, if you can keep the flow through Spoon as well, then you just have your pace and you're going to set much faster lap times. If you just miss a little bit out of the S's, if you just fail to clip the apex, you immediately lose 2 or 3 tenths. The drivers will be hot at you and you'll have to watch out as soon as you hit the hairpin. And if you do the thing at Spoon, well, then you're going to get overtaken even before 130R. So you definitely have to make sure that you stay within the flow and keep within the flow. But I'm pretty sure our drivers here are more than experienced enough to get that sorted. The run to start from start finish is not all too long. It's a couple of 100 meters. So there could be some overtaking at the start of the race. That's also something we have to keep in mind. As long as the race doesn't start anywhere like in 1990, I think we should be all right, shouldn't we?
I think we'll be just fine. But yeah, so I'm looking around. And it looks like we're about to get in. I think all the drivers are ready to go. It's looking a little bit overcast, crucially, as well. I wonder if it's going to at all get wet, but it looks like as all the drivers are sort of priming their setups, making sure they're good to go, I think that the weather is maybe going to prove a little bit of a differentiator. 'Cause it is the great equalizer. A wet race, it is what many refer to as that great equalizer.
Yeah, Japan being quite notorious for rainy races. We, of course, had, I think it was back in 2008 or no, just over a decade ago, where we had to move qualifying to Sunday morning. Of course, had last year where we had that very, very rainy race and, well, quite a bit of a shorter race because of the rain. I believe next year it's been moved in the calendar to, is it like April? Just to make sure that we don't head into the rain, the official calendar, that is.
I
believe it was moved, yeah. So I think that would at least make it a little bit easier because you're outside the typhoon season in Asia. So that hopefully means that we have less rain there. Of course, means it's less exciting for us viewers, but I think for the drivers and for the people on the grandstands as well, a lot less hectic, a lot less rain, and a lot less risk of cancellation because we do not want any recaps of Belgium. As we now see the lights go on, it's 5 lights on, and we are off, and it looks like Alexander Dimas is the best start, getting off the line very well. It's at least like, I mean, we have to defend from Sven Schumacher, who has gone with the overtake, but it's Alexander Dimas leading through turn 1. It's like I trying to pick up the position from Rear Sprogis, but he's actually overtaken him through as we move through the S's. But we've had a very clean start, not too many issues, not too many positions dropped, and our pole position holder is still holding strong out on top.
Oh, as soon as you say that, there's been a clean start, we have an off, and that's going to be Ardagune of the Aston Martin team, as well as Milan Meyer. I wonder if they made contact, because they both sank down the order like stones in that whole ordeal, and that is certainly going to be a rough start to them this race. Looking around the rest of the field, we have Jeremy, who is locked in wheel-to-wheel combat with Harry right now. He's looking for any opportunity that he can find. He's side by side with that Alpine. He is in fact going to have to yield heading into the final sector. Unfortunately, he didn't get the move done that he otherwise wanted to do, and you have a few moves that could be materializing around the rest of the field in just a moment. Like, for example, you've got a bit of a battle between the two Mercedes drivers. A little bit of flashbacks.
Oh, maybe an overtake for P1? Brogue is actually fully centered on Sven Schumacher and has now dropped back to third, but even went for a lunge on Alexander Dimas.
And looks like we have another off, and that is going to be Jeremy. Jeremy is off the track, and Ben, Karapi, Aleda, Lund, and Gunek are all going to be heading into the pits on lap 1. So, very curious as to what's going on here.
I saw two
really
missing
sure
front wings. So Nicola Leda and Balanilekis were missing their front wing. I believe that Ben Marples has also gone for a front wing switch. For the other drivers, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see how this is going to affect their strategy, because to go in the pits on lap 1, you usually don't do that in this damage. Maybe you had an end plate, but I like to think that sort of avoiding those scenarios. And looking a bit further down, we have Silly Sly Guy here, who is trying to make a bit of a charge on the two Alpines. So we briefly saw a trade. He is on the hards, which is a crucial point here. Everyone up here is running soft tyres, so Sly Guy once again punching above his weight in that regard by being the hard runner in a sea of soft tyres. But looking up ahead, looks like Reinhard Sprogis is going to be going for a move. Sven Schumacher briefly tries to peek in, but that Haas is not having any of it as we come through the final chicane here and heading down through lap 2. It is going to be Reinhard Sprogis who is just going to take the lead of the race and take the fastest lap while he's at it right before DRS gets activated.
Yeah, we have some amazing pace for Riyad Sprogis. We see he was already looking for it. They went too wide into the 130R. Some amazing battling there. Very clean battling as well. And then through the Casio triangle, went for the overtake on Alexander Dimas. But now it's going to be very interesting to see how much more pace that he does have, because now DRS is going to come into play. And when he was behind Alexander Dimas, he seemed to be quickly catching. But now pulling away with perhaps slipstreams that kept him a little bit closer might be a different task.
Well, if he gets about 3/10 ahead every lap, he can just about break even. Luckily, there is only one DRS zone on this track, so it is not as effective. I mean, it's not as much of a worry as the drivers would have found it on other circuits in the calendar, but it's still something to keep an eye on. So I'm sure Sprogis is going to be anxiously looking at the delta between himself and between Dimas, who is very close behind in that Red Bull.
Let's move on board with Alexander Dimas, as he indeed is within 2/10s. We saw Riyad Sprogis do the same thing last time around. Dimas is going to lift a little bit, and I think he wants to go for the overtaking move into the chicane, but he is going to leave that for now. He knows he's got the DRS. He's going to go for a great exit out of the Casio triangle, and he's now going to line it up 3/10s behind. DRS is now activated as he's going to move down the inside line, but he's going to keep it behind. He doesn't want to go for an overtake yet. Definitely had the pace for it, but I think we're back to playing strategies just like we saw last week.
I think it is just a case of proximity. I was noticing that he is kind of tailing off a little bit when he came to the back of Sprogis, so he by all means could have gone for it, but it's more a question of would he been cleanly ahead as opposed to alongside, because you don't want to be alongside, especially by the time you get to the curbs, because that is effectively a death sentence to either one of you, or you are just going to slow down massively. Because remember, Sven Schumacher's still in the mix too. These two start squabbling aggressively, and they're just going to end up in the crosshairs of that Alfa Romeo all the same. As you're going to see Aragune, going to be our first retirement of the session following their early incident. They're going to bring us down to 18 drivers on track.
Well, we do still have a yellow in Sector 1, so I think there might have been another mistake. He got a penalty and then he left the session, so I'm not sure if this is going to play into the race with a virtual safety car or a safety car, but seeing the amount of time it's been taken so far, I don't think we're going to get a safety car, and indeed the yellows have been lifted. As in the meantime, we're still spectating Alexander Dimas trying to mount yet another charge onto Weerts Progress. Got a slightly better exit. We saw some wheel spin from Weerts Progress, and this should be enough for Alexander Dimas to go for the overtake. And indeed, he is going to put it side by side as they head into turn 1. And Sven Schumacher is also going to send it, try and go for a double move into turn 1, and he is going to inherit that P2. Weerts Progress upping 2 positions in a matter of 1 corner, just because of that little bit of wheel spin out of the final quarter.
Say that crucial moment where I think he knew it's like, yep, I'm going to concede here, as Dimas and Schumacher both fly past, as that is going to be a complete 180 on the podium order from what it was last lap. So from first to third, it's Progress, and then Dimas has been Schumacher picking up the pieces. I wonder if he's going to counter, or what he's going to counter with.
What I think is actually one of the more interesting things that we see so far, if we look at the compounds that the drivers are on, of course our top 6 is all on soft compounds, but in 7th position finds Silly Sly Guy. He's on the hard compound. He's staying within DRS range of all of the drivers that are ahead of him. So even Santa Maria, Marek Znamorowski, Harry Weerts Progress, Sven Schumacher, and Alexander Dimas, all within DRS range, and he is on 2 compounds harder. So he's having some amazing race pace on those hard tires, even gone for the overtake onto Ivan Santa Maria, so he's now gone up into 6th. And one has to wonder, when we're going to have our pit stops, and later on he is going to be on the softer compounds, can he fight for the win? As we see Sven Schumacher now taking over lead from Alexander Dimas. A lot of shuffling up at the front of the field, and definitely our top 7's keeping it really, really close.
Yeah, our top 7 is really where all eyes are at right now. So you've got fights at the top, fights for P6, P7 as Sly Guy really pulling out some magical pace out of the hard compound tyres and out of his current race strategy. But it is certainly going to benefit him well. If he can keep in contention, as we see the Alpines briefly trade, if he can keep in contention of the soft runners on the hards, then when it comes to strategy time, when it comes to swapping tyres, he's going to be absolutely in the money, provided he makes the right choice of when to pit for his second compound. He's going to be in a really good standing for the second half of this race.
Definitely when strategy is going into play, he has a good opportunity there, as Ben Marbles picks up a 3-second time penalty for track limits at this point. He, of course, is one of the drivers that went for the first set of pit stops. So out of the pit stop guys, he is in front, but looking at the gaps, he is not going to be in contention for the top 7. As we see Silly Sly Guy try and go around the outside, and he does make that move stick around the outside at the casino triangle, and he's now up into 5th, continuing his charge, and he's got massive pace in those hards. We cannot stress this enough, but overtaking soft runners of your close competitors in a league that is this high, that hats off, really.
I just wonder how he's extracting all this pace. Like, has he got like a god tier setup? Is he running really aggressive on the wings? Because he seems to be on par, at least right now, in terms of pace with 2 compound softers. That's crazy stuff. And you say, looking around the rest of the field, it's not like any of them are particularly fighting. More like just keeping their own
fight all that much for it, though. And still keeping it fairly close to Marek Znamorowski, who's in front, 4 tenths behind, although it definitely looks like Harry is not going to give this up too easily. And if he can get that slightly better exit out of Spoon, he might be able to go for it on the back stretch, because let's not forget, 2 compounds mean the world of a difference. Although Harry does go a little bit wide, entering smooth, but the exit's slightly better, but looks like he's a little bit too far away if he wants to mount an overtake. He is going to use a bit of his ERS, still has about 40% remaining. And if we look at Silly Sly Guy, he still has 71% of that remaining. So a lot of ERS. As soon as we see down the inside, even Santa Maria, a late send, a late lunge, but he does get the overtake onto Harry Dunn. Now puts himself into 6th position. Every single lap, we see some tussling for positions, as now Marek Znamierovski is trying to go around the inside of Gerard Sproges into turn 1, but decides the better of it.
Yeah, so I think it's a dangerous game. I think if you haven't got the move completed by about 50 meters before turn 1, I think it's safe to abandon. If you're alongside, you can maybe make that judgment if you've got the inside line, but otherwise, it's just a very risky game to play. Not one you necessarily want to play. And I think Marek took the right decision here. He's going to bide his time, save his resource. So I think he is about on par right now with Sproges in terms of tyre wear, ERS, all the rest of it. Just sort of wait and see what they can conjure.
Yeah, most of the drivers are around about on 70-75% ERS. Apart from Alexander Dimas and Sven Schumacher, their ERS tally is almost completely filled with 97 and 95%. So they are definitely saving here a little bit. But they as well know, if they're going to use a lot of ERS, the only thing that's going to do is speed up the guys behind them as well, because of the slipstream opportunity that you have here, and later on the DRS. So it doesn't make too much sense to use it now, but as soon as you're going to go for that pit stop, then you want to deplete a lot of it. If you're going for that outlap, you want to use a lot, and then hopefully get more than a 1 second gap, so that after the pit stop sequence, you do have that bit of a lead. So they might have a bit of a better opportunity because of that. That might play into their strategy. And yeah, as we mentioned before, Silly Sly Guy, 5th position. He has the compound advantage later on. It's now Sven Schumacher takes over the lead once again from Alexander Dimas.
Yeah, it's the really good. I'll say what I said before is that if you're going to save battery, and I think these guys are doing a lot better job of it this time, is hover around 90 to 95%, but don't let yourself go to 100. Because if we're going off the pure numbers, if you're at 100%, you're wasting energy. So you need to be using that battery if you are aggressively coming up to the limit, the upper cap. So we can see it here a little bit. They're just hovering around that 90% mark, 95% mark. And yes, they have all the resources on tap, but Sven Schumacher's doing a little bit better of a job of just maximizing every ounce of that battery to make sure that they're not leaving any energy wasted on the table.
Yeah, with Alexander Dimas having slightly more, occasionally seeing it hit to 100%, should use a little bit more of that, but he as well does not want to go for that overtake too easily, even though he is very, very close as we approach 130R, and he might be able to have enough for an overtake. He is going to look down the inside, but he's not going to make a move. So again here, he does have that little bit of overspeed. Oh, he goes for a bit. I thought he was drifting out a little bit. Sven Schumacher did the same, but Alexander Dimas is going to be the first to stop, and he's followed by Marek Znamierovski and Harry. But those are teammates. This is a double stack. This is not planned. Oh, wait, did something? That took a long while. This cost Harry a lot of time. That is some missing communication between the teammates, and that is going to put him out of contention, because he was doing quite well fighting with the top 6 runners, but because of this, you're not competing anymore for a win, I think, unless there's a late safety car. But this is terrible for Harry, and yeah, look at that. He lost about 5 or 6 seconds with that. That is terrible.
That's super rough. I definitely feel for him there. Yeah, so just a miscommunication between the two teammates. Not ideal in this scenario. Hopefully we see better communication from the two Ferraris we're keeping aboard with right now. We've got Primek and Cornet here, and they look to be sandwiching the Mercedes of Noel Carman. Ben Marples, another penalty going to be infringed for track limits. I don't know, let's keep an eye, as now the order has shaken up. It's noticeably different. Dimas is much further down the order. He switched onto the hards, which I assume he's going to take till the end of the race, along with Marek. And Harry is going to be going onto the medium. Sven Schumacher now heads into the pits, along with Ivan Santamaria, and Sprogis is going to be going on for a lap longer. I wonder if he's trying to extend the life of the softs so he can take the mediums to the end and have a bit of a softer compound compared to the hard runners who have not long gone in.
Yeah, meanwhile, we also see an overtake from Noah Karman onto Przemek Kubac, who's now, Noah Karman is now up into third place. Silly Slaga has actually gone out of the DRS range of Riyad Sprogis, so I think he's pushing quite a bit and using quite a lot of that ERS, and indeed he's currently on 35%, so he's used a lot of that in the previous lap. I think he'll be looking to come in. Ben Marbles, in the meantime, is retired from the session. He's not going to continue. Wonder if that is going to come into play, because we have yellow in sector 1, but I think we're going to have the same thing as there. So no VSC, no safety car either. But Silly Slaga is actually dropping quite a bit now. I'm not sure if this is because the soft runners are pushing that much more, or if life in the hard compound is also starting to give way. He's struggling a little bit more through Spoon now, as we can see, but I don't think it will matter all that much. As we see, Sven Schumacher has actually gone for the medium compound, so he is going to try and make life a little bit easier on him. I think that when Silly Sly Guy, Noel Karlman, Przemek Kubac are going to come in, I think they'll likely go for the mediums as well. I think risking it for softs will be too much, unless you're going to risk it for a very late stop. So now our race leader, Riyad Sprogis, has come into the pits. Let's see where he is going to come out, because I think those 2 extra laps might send him back the order a little bit. We see that Marek Znaborovsky's got the overtake onto Sven Schumacher because of the undercut. And I think that we'll find Riyad Sprogis perhaps even behind Ivan Santamaria. Let's have a look.
Flying by here. He's just going to make it out ahead of that Aston Martin. Is going to be good enough for P10 or, say, net P4. Net P4? Yeah. So he is going to get a good position, but it's still not where he wants to be, because Sven Schumacher is up ahead, Marek is up ahead, and Dimas has got a fairly comfortable gap to the both of them. So Sven Schumacher looks to be on an absolute mission right now, just set a purple, and Dimas is firmly in that Alpha's crosshairs.
Well, the good thing here is we now see Alexander Dimas going on the overtake of our championship leader, Milan Meyer, who is yet to make a pit stop. He unfortunately is not really there as in terms of pace compared to the other drivers, but for both Sven Schumacher and Riyad Sprogis, they are on a medium compound. Something in the back of my room just fell around randomly. But it looks like they will have the tire advantage when it comes to this stint. I don't think we're going to see any more pit stops. And the big question is, at what point is Silly Sly Guy going to come out after the pit stop sequence? Because he will have to make up quite a lot of time. And I think the way that I see it progress for now, he will have to extend the stint so he can go for a soft run at the end of the session.
Well, so we've got a few changes up around the field. So, namely, the Linhart is going to be jumping in despite being on the hard. So, I'd say a bit of a premature stop there, but if they're going to jump to try and optimize the life of the medium, then so be it. We are also going to see Milan Meyer head into the pits, and Noel Carman is going to get up into P2 so far. Silly Sly Guy, nearly 4 seconds away. I have to say, done an absolutely brilliant job of the race so far. Let's see if that momentum continues, as Jeremy is going to be dropping down behind Santamaria in that Aston Martin, and is going to start feeling the effects of fresh mediums versus wearing hards out here on track. Only Leo Lund is out on the soft compound after a late switch following a couple of their incidents out on track. And they did, for a while, have the fastest lap, but Sven Schumacher quickly took that one back.
Yeah, he'll definitely have to come back in later on in the races. In the meantime, we saw Sven Schumacher go with the overtake onto Alexander Dimas, so he is now our net race leader. Of course, on that compound tire softer, he has got that 1 lap pressure tire too. But Alexander Dimas very, very slow, and Silly Sly Guy picks up a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That might ruin his bid for the top step. let's take a look. Where is he? He is still in the pits, has now completed that pit stop. He is going to drive on those medium compounds, so he won't really have that tire advantage, but he is going to drop back significantly. Might even fall back behind Harry. He does just fall back behind him, so have to make up, well, more than 7 or 8 seconds if he wants to get to the lead of the field. So, and then he still has his penalty. So, I think his great efforts on the hard compound have unfortunately been undone now. This is very unfortunate for him.
Yeah, so that 5-second penalty. I'm getting a little bit of deja vu here. I can't be honest enough with that. I am getting massive deja vu where drivers have had really good race and then just either an erroneous penalty for track limits or for speeding in the pit lane, just comes in, knocks all the wind out of your sails and says, nope, that's a nice win you got there, Senator. What's the source? There is none. Source is he made it up. It's a 5-second penalty and he's not going to be going anywhere on the podium with that.
I mean, that we see more and more tussling for what is currently P3, as Alexander Dimas has taken that position back from Sven Schumacher. I think he managed to do that around the hairpin, around that area. But he is now leading. He has got a little bit of a bigger gap now. The Silly Sly Guy now also picks up a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Not great for him. Now, Sebek Kubac is in for his pit stop, so it's just waiting for Noel Karlman, but he is going to extend that stint until he can go to the soft, so perhaps 1 or 2 more laps that he will have to stay out. And of course, he went in after those lap 1 incidents, so because of that, he has a little bit of extra time. And Jeremy is on pit stop as well, falling back all the way to P15. But our main fight seems to be heating up between Sven Schumacher, Riyad Sprogas, and Ivan Santamaria. Marek Znamirovski has fallen outside of DRS range, although 1.1 seconds still can get back in. And of course, Alexander Diemans, who's leading the pack, although his tires are the oldest, and he is on the hard compound. So the 3 guys behind him are all mediums.
Yeah, so well, they're gonna have to push and fight like hell if they're gonna have any chance of making a difference here. So we're on board with Santa Maria right now. We're kind of getting a little bit of a bird's eye view of the whole grid of P2 up to P5. So we've got a few different battles that could commence. You've got Sven Schumacher right on the tail of Dimas, and you've got Sprogas, who is in the crosshairs of the Aston Martin. So let's see what they can do. Interestingly, the overcast weather is that he's not going to have to worry as much, I think, because of ambient track temps, as Noel Karlman is going to finally head into the pits and onto mediums, no less. Silly Sly Guy going for a fastest lap, and Sven Schumacher does in fact secure the P1 spot. A great driving there from the Alpha.
Yeah, went for that overtake into turn 1 with the DRS, just a little bit easier, but it was a lot closer than the previous lap. As you mentioned, Silly Sly Guy, one of the few things that he can do now is try and get that point for the fastest lap, which he currently does hold. I'm not sure if anyone else might be going up into contention for that, but perhaps Nicola Leda and Andrew Karapi, as I assume they will have to make a pit stop, being on 14 lap hards, and the same thing for Balindolecki's 14 lap mediums, so they'll likely still have to come in. As for the other drivers, yeah, Marek Znamirovski is not getting back within the DRS range, dropped half a second this current lap, as Sven Schumacher, Alexander Dimas, Riyad Sprogas, and Ivan Santamaria are all within about a second of the leader even, as we see Riyad Sprogas looking down the inside of the 130R. They will now try to go round the outside of the casino chicane, and doesn't make it stick. He's keeping it next to each other. Alexander Dimas with a snap oversteer, not costing him too much. They're now side by side as we go round the pit straight. But it looks like Alexander Dimas has a little bit more space, although Riyad Sprogas is not giving up around the outside into turn 1. And can he make it stick as we get into the S's? I think he can. I think he does, but they're not giving up. And it's Alexander Dimas who still has it, still not giving up as they battle side by side through the S's. It's finally Richard Progress who is going to take that second spot. But some amazing battling between the drivers for P2. Very clean too. That was amazing.
What a drive from Sprogis there. Just, yep, not giving up, not giving an inch. I said earlier that you do not want to be going side by side through the curves because that's going to lose you a ton of time and going to put you right in the crosshairs of other drivers. But Sprogis, all the way from the last chicane, from the triangle, all the way up to coming out of the curves, he just said, no, I want this P2. I'm side by side with you. I'm not leaving till I get what I want. And he perfectly held the line, even when they were bumping tires just a tiny bit, held firm, and it's paid off.
I thought we were going to see a Kimi Räikkönen move when he took over the race lead, when they started from 16th or 17th, the final lap in turn 1. But it took Richard Progress a little bit longer to get past Alexander Dimas, but a couple of turns side by side, clean racing. That was really, really great to see. And now it's up to him to see if he can catch Sven Schumacher, because we saw in the first stint, I believe it was Richard Progress who had that best pace. But can he continue? We now have yellow in sector 1. One of the McLarens, I think that is Leo Lund. He's now driving very, very slowly on track. Let's see what has happened to him. Sleeping to pick up the pace as Nicola Letta has currently retired. That is one of our alphas, and we have a virtual safety car. Let's see if maybe Andrew Karapi could have come in, but it just came when he was past the pit straight. So the next driver that can potentially go for a stop is Balanalekis, who indeed does go in. So this might help him a little bit. But yeah, being in 15th, still having to make that pit stop is not going to be great for him. But I'm curious what happened. Do you see what happened to Nicola Letta?
I didn't see what happened. I know that Leolund did have a bit of an off just beforehand, but I'm not sure what happened with Aleda personally. So I guess we'll have to wait and hear back from the drivers as to what really went down there. Fortunately, I couldn't catch anything on the cam.
In the meantime, to give our viewers some insight as well, prior to the race, Leolund was mentioning that his pedal was not fully functioning 100%, so that is likely why he is at the back of the field as we see him come into the pit straight again, and also picks up speeding in the pit. Yeah, that's what those pedals do. As in the meantime, Sven Schumacher has gotten under pressure of Richard Progress, but he manages to stay put. Oh, a lot of oversteer for Richard Progress. Immediately has to cover the inside for Alexander Dimas. Does seem to have a little bit more speed, but if you use just enough ERS, you can still make it stay there, and he does keep it into second position, but a slightly dangerous exit of the final corner for him, as we see Silly Sly Guy go with the overtake on Marek Znamorowski. He's now gone within 2 seconds of these guys up front. It really shows how much pace he does have, but yeah, with 8 seconds that are going to be added up at the back of the race, that will put him back into like 7th or 8th. So let's see how much more pace he still has in hand.
Well, I'll say it. I think the hope is that he can draw out enough pace, he can draw out enough distance to salvage what he can, do a little bit of damage control. So maybe try and push for the fastest lap. That's still going to be a point. Maybe get as much pace as he can down on the track. That way he can save himself a position. So realistically, I think the best that he will do is P7, but could potentially shave that, or even depending on the gap that he can pull in these last few laps here, as we are coming up to the final few. So lap 19 and 27 here. You can see that the urgency is certainly pipped up in a couple of drivers. So Sprogis getting around Schumacher. Is Schumacher going to have the DRS? Yes, the move was done before the detection, so he could go for a retake here if he does feel like it. He's got the resources on tap, he's got the DRS at his disposal, but he's choosing not to go for it. I think Sprogis has deployed a lot of his battery just then in order to keep him at bay, but the urgency is certainly not lost on these drivers, as we have a few of them still fighting hard.
Sven Schumacher still has a lot of battery left, almost filled all the way up to the brim. As we look at Richard Progress, a little less than half. Alexander Dimas is at 84%. 5 about even Santa Maria is at 55. Silly Slugger actually made up about half a second to the pack up ahead of him. He's now moved within the DRS range, hitting about 2/10 through the Deckners. And he might be able to make something work there, as Alexander Dimas is now battling a little bit with Ivan Santamaria. But of course, the longer the race is going to go on, the better Alexander Dimas is going to be at, because he has the hard compound. So in a couple of laps, he is going to retake that advantage for tires. And really the driver that's still looking the best for is Red Sprongas, because he did pit the latest out of these drivers. So he will have the freshest tires. But again, Sven Schumacher has that ERS advantage. So we really have a lot of drivers still battling for it, and the driver with no advantages is still within a tenth of Alexander Dimas. So a lot of drivers that can still do their bits, as Silly Sly Guy is now moved in within 3/10. And I think if there's one driver keen to dispatching their opponents as quickly as possible, it must be him.
And we see once again a trade at the top of the field as Sven Schumacher and Rad Sprogis once again swap positions for the lead of the race, and these two are kind of like a pendulum in the way that they are trading up and trading out positions. You've got a big issue happening down the field. That is going to be Harry and Premit Hubac both going off the track or spinning, and that is going to lend themselves a much bigger time gap to the rest of the field that they are going to be certainly annoyed about that one. And we're going to keep an eye up at the top end still, as the fight up here is far from over. Bregas and Schumacher keep trading blows, and I wonder just how much patience is left between the two. I know that in the cockpit, in a race like this, things can get heated, and not everyone's got a race engineer to necessarily calm them down.
Well, we'll have to see how that is going to go, as we're going to approach the final 5 laps in a moment. What is also interesting to note is that Noel Carmen, who was involved in some of the carnage in lap 1, who had to go for a pit stop, is now up into 7th position, about 5.5 seconds behind Marek Znamierovski, but looks to have quite a bit of the pace advantage. I'm not sure if he can make up more than a second a lap with those fresher tires, but he might still be up in contention to get some good points, as there's still going to be 8 seconds added to Silly Sly Guy, who is now dispatched on Santa Maria and moved up into 4th. How much more overtaking can he do before he sees the checkered flag? And penalties are going to be applied, because he has got some massive pace in that car.
The pace that he's extracting. Well, he's got 8 lap hold mediums, and those are, I'd say, short of drivers who've just recently pitted at the bottom, like Alekes and Lund. Those are the most, what I call, prime time tyres on the track right now. You've got 8 lap hold mediums. You are going to have a bit more pushing power than the hards and then the medium runners who are a couple laps older. I know Sprogis pitted a little bit later, so he has got a bit more prime time with those medium compounds, but he is still going to have the issue of eventually those are going to fade. Dimas is hot on the trail, and I'm not sure too much as to the pace differential, but I know that after a certain point, hards are going to be just as fast, if not faster, than mediums. And that point should be coming up fairly soon.
Yeah, we already see that he's trying to look down the inside and the outside of both 130R and the Casio Triangle. What is also very interesting to see, what we're going to see in about half a second from now, is the pace advantage that Silly Sly Guy has as we go into Deckner 2. If we pay attention there, he wins almost a 1.5 tenths on the drivers up in front of him. And, I mean, his tires are only a few laps fresher, so I'm not entirely sure how he does that. But he makes up a massive amount of time there, as we're now going through the last of the S's. So we're slowly approaching that area, so we can now see how much more pace that he has here. We're now at the end of Sector 1, going into the first Deckner, and it's exactly here, the second Deckner. He seems to just get so much more speed. Look how much he gains. That is over a tenth again. So much speed there.
It seems to be like the level of grip he's able to extract. Maybe he just hits a certain area of the track where it curves upwards and really sort of puts the pressure on the tyres to grip up I'm not sure. I couldn't explain it to you, but one thing is for sure, he's looking like an absolute cruise missile trying to sive his way up the field, and even with the penalties to his name, that doesn't look to have slowed him down in the slightest. If anything, it looks to have pushed him even harder.
It definitely seems to look like it, and he is now slightly further behind, not using that much ERS yet. Perhaps wants to do more of that at the end of the race. Meanwhile, Noel Carmen, who we mentioned earlier on, about 5.5 seconds behind, has now made up 2.5 seconds in just 2 laps. He is now within 2.5 seconds of Marek Snabarovsky, so he'll be looking at his rearview mirrors as Alexander Dimas has to do a little bit of a defending move and late lunge by Silly Sly Guy, but he's not going to make that stick as Leo Lund once again picks up a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. We see how much speed Silly Sly Guy has, and now he's within 3/10. If he can do the same thing that he's done the previous laps in the Degner first, he might be able to go for an overtake in the hairpin.
It's just all about the setup. Suzuka is a track of flow, it's a track of rhythm, and especially, if nothing else, it is a track that is known for your ability to chain corners together and keep your speed up through them. So, especially through the curves, but even through things like the Degners, 200R, 130R, you just carry your speed as best you can, you keep gripped up, and if you can set yourself up well a couple of corners prior, it pays off. Great dividends in the corners following. So I think that's where we may see Silly Sly Guy have a little bit of his advantage, just from the fact that he gets a really good line through Degner 1 and then into Degner 2. He just has that prime setup, maybe, so that he can get a really good exit and just shave a little bit of time. I'm not really sure without some deeper analysis, but one thing I do know for sure is that we are coming up to the final few laps. And if any driver here is going to make a move for a position, as Dimas is doing here, going the inside of Rad Sprogis, Sprogis is going to be countering with some battery and push of his own to say, nope, I see you down the inside, I'm not letting you have this. But he is going to be pushing, and they're going to try and get some moves done. I always say that if you want a position, you get it on lap 26 in this case. That way you can lock it in through 27. So if they want to get a position, if they want to get a win here, basically have to do it now, or start setting up for it now for that final run.
The action's definitely going to be heating up at this moment, as we saw Alexander Dimas already very anxious to get by Rad Sprogis, but he was able to counter, just has slightly more ERS to his disposal. Sven Schumacher again has an extra 10%, so it's at 60 for third place, 70 for second, and about 80 for Sven Schumacher in first. Still tire advantage in the hands of Rad Sprogis. Alexander Dimas on the harder compound that perhaps is now starting to work a little bit better. But now is about the time when you have to use a bit of ERS, a bit of extra ERS, because when we enter the start-finish line, there will be just 2 more laps before we're going to see that. Meantime, the other battle that we're following, as we see Alexander Dimas having to defend from around the outside, as Silly Sly Guy is gone with a move there, but he's not able to make that stick, braking a little bit too late, and overshooting the Casio triangle means that Ivan Santa Maria has gotten the overtake done on him again. Noah Coleman is keeping that gap towards Marek Znamorovsky at still about 2 seconds, so it doesn't seem like he is going to get any closer. Milan Meyer, championship leader, still in 12th position, too far behind any of the drivers in front of him, so I don't think he'll be able to do much more. I think the real fight is within the top 5 runners that we see, and yeah, 5 drivers at least on driving standards, and then after penalties apply, it will be 4. But the battle's heating up. Final 2 laps. Now it's going to get interesting.
It is now going to get interesting indeed, as we keep an eye on our top 3 runners, all within a few tenths of each other. Even Santa Maria eagerly watching behind. Unfortunately, Sly Guy's move did not materialize, and in fact he lost more than he gained. That final run into the chicane and breaking that bit too late means that he also had to yield to the Aston Martin. So he's now down in P5. He can push for P4, but I think his options are very limited here. All eyes are on Dimas, Sprogis and Schumacher, as we can watch on board eagerly to see what these drivers can do. So Sprogis, you can see, going fairly aggressive, look to get a little bit of attacking pressure, a little bit of a spook, if you will. You see Santa Maria and Silly Sly Guy trading a little bit further behind. Again, nothing going to materialize from there. And then you see Sprogus. This is it. This is the move. This is now he's got a massive pace differential against Sven Schumacher. He's going to rocket past him through turn 1. And he's going to lock it in through the curves. But he's going to have an absolute godly send down the start-finish straight. Can he lock it in? Can he keep it? That's the question on my mind, as time is going to be running short. And Dimas could even be looking for a little bit of his own bounty.
Yeah, it looked like Ritz Progress managed to catch Sven Schumacher a bit napping there. Went early on with the ERS after the exit of the final corner. And then it looked like Sven Schumacher tried to do about the same, but just because that better exit, just because of having that DRS, having that extra speed, and now he has to make sure that the gap doesn't increase too much, as Ritz Progress is already using as much ERS as he can to defend. But he has about a 3/10 gap. Still getting a little bit closer, but way too wide through the first spoon corner. Sven Schumacher is now going to be too far behind. It almost looks like Ritz Progress has it already, although we have to look at Alexander Dimas as well, because that exit could make it difficult for you, Sven. Still has about 3/10 of a gap. I don't think Alexander Dimas can go for any lunge here as we approach the final corner. A little bit of drifting through there by Sven Schumacher, but I don't think it's going to matter all that much. The move was made last lap. It's Ritz Progress picking up the win here at Suzuka.
And a great job there to be had. Sly Guy is going to be there serving his penalties and is going to end up landing in a P7 overall, as we see the other drivers start to come through. Yeah, so Sprogus is going to win the Japanese Grand Prix here at PSGL PC F4. Elikes is going to get another penalty to kind of add insult to injury down in P15. But there you go. So Sven Schumacher still walking away with the P2. Very strong result. Dimas in P3 rounding off the podium. And then you've got the other drivers starting to file suit, file in. All retirements this round, seemingly due to damage, and you have a few drivers complaining of high damage values and a little bit of contact. I'm sure the stewards are going to be all over it.
We'll definitely have to keep a bit of an eye on that to see what's happened. As in the meantime, the game picks Noel Carlman as our driver of the day. What's interesting to see is that our championship leader finished in 13th position, so he won't be picking up any points. Andrew Karapi was also close to the top step of the leaderboard, finishing even below that, so also not picking up any points. It will be, Sven Schumacher who is going to get a little bit closer to Alexander Dimas, but by the looks of it, Alexander Dimas has now retaken the lead of the championship with that 3rd place position. Although Ritz Progress is also going up quite a bit.
Yeah, that is certainly going to be a big jump in terms of the championship order. Certainly for some drivers, and for one of those drivers, Ritz Progress, it's going to be a win on the board. A brilliant job there. I'd say even Santa Maria, though, P14 on the grid, coming up to finish P4. And then Noel Coleman from 18th to 6th. Cornet from 19th to 8th. Big gaps, big jumps coming for a lot of these drivers, but there you go. You can see the board here. So Santa Maria in 4th, Zemorowski in 5th, Coleman in 6th, and then you've got Silly Sly Guy, Cornet DeBacco, Jeremy, Remek Hubach, Harry, Dixon, Linhart, Milan Meyer, Andrew Korepi, and then Ben Elekes, Leo Lund, Leder, Morples, and Gune. Last 4 of those all being retirements, unfortunately. And that is your race order, folks. That is where we stand and where we sit PCF4 as of time of writing. So as a reminder, as we saw from last round, these results are provisional. You may see penalties applied, so we cannot say for 100% certainty this is the final order. You may have penalty points. You may have a few drivers who are going to get bumped up or down. Maybe they got a unfair double warning, so 3-second penalties are going to get removed too. You have to wait and see. That's all we can wait for. But what a race, like, especially at the top end of the field. Like, it just, everything was constantly chopping and changing.
Yeah, there was a lot of shuffling for first place, also for second and third, but definitely the most for first. Definitely that battle with Ritz Progress and Alexander Dimas was truly amazing. Trying to go by in turn 1, side by side through turns 2, 3, 4, and then finally getting it. I think it was even as early as the Casio triangle, so turn 16, and then all the way till about turn 4, they were side by side, not touching, no damage, clean racing. And then, of course, that late move, that race-winning move by Richard Sprogas in the final lap, where he managed to overtake Sven Schumacher on the pit straight. Just getting the better exit there, and then with the DRS, it's just that little bit easier to get that overtake done. So plan that well, time that well, and yeah, also as you mentioned, Noel Carmen making up so many positions, and it was Marek Znamierovski was also made up. I think he started 14th and then finished in 4th, so 5th. 4th or 5th, and he also had a massive race. A lot of drivers coming from the back, but some very, very nice racing from these drivers up front.
Yeah, and I think it's only fair that we get to hear from some of our drivers here. So we have got the fortunate opportunity to talk to all 3 of our top runners here, so our entire podium get a chance to talk to them all. And I think first off, only fair that we talk to the one, the only, Richard Sprogas. How are we doing? Congratulations on your performance today. How are we feeling?
Fantastic feeling, man. Really didn't expect the win, to be fair.
What were your expectations heading into this weekend? Like, Suzuka, is that a fairly strong, weak track, or like indifferent?
At the start of the game, it was really good, I felt like, but then I didn't really practice that much and had some weird feeling, and I wasn't really happy with my pace. So, but yeah, I did a 0.9, which I'm really, I guess, happy with. Not the best lap, of course, only P5, but yeah, I'm more like a race pace merchant, you know. Quality is not really my thing. I'm always bottling, like, I can't get my lap together, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely looked like that earlier on in the race. So the first stint you seem to have one of the best pace together with Silly Sly Guy, and then the second stint also having that, well, probably the best pace out of the front runners. But you have to take us to that fight with Alexander Dimas a couple of laps before the end. Driving side by side for at least 5 or 6 turns, keeping it clean, and then getting the overtake done in the S's. How was that?
You know, we are fighting for the championship, you know, between me and Dimas. I think he's the main rival here, so I will give everything just to get ahead of him. So, yeah, about the start, yeah, my start was really good. I was really surprised that I made up like 3 or even 4 positions at the start. And yeah, just I had to keep up with these guys. Then when pit stops came, I was really surprised that some of these drivers boxed to hards. I was really surprised, kind of. But then I saw Sven boxing for mediums. So yeah, I thought we are going to work together and try to get out of DRS and like fight. Let the fight begin with me and him. So, but yeah, then some more midfield drivers had some overcut, undercut situations. So I had to go through the field again, which I did, and then yeah, gave everything when I was like 1.2 or 1.3 seconds behind, and I didn't have DRS, so had to give everything and push as hard as possible, use every ERS, and I did got back to DRS, and then just had to regenerate the battery and save the tires till the end.
Nice. Well, let's say I take it that the championship is the aim for you. I mean, currently, as the time of writing, you're in 6th position, but obviously after today, you're going to have a healthy couple of jumps up that order. Is the championship on the cards? Is that what you're hunting this season?
Yeah, that's the main goal for this season. I'm not going to finish 2nd or 3rd. I'm going for the championship. So, yeah, I want to become a champion so hard.
100%. That's the mindset we want. Anything from you, Myth?
Well, the last thing I want to add is before going into this race, you were the only multiple race winner this season. With the standings being provisional as they are, if they're going to be confirmed as such, that would mean that out of the 6 races, you would have won 3 races. So that does show down the tracks you have got some amazing pace out there, definitely up into contention for the top step. You're about 10 points behind Milan Meyer before we went into this race. Of course, he is not going to score any points. You're 7 behind Alexander Dimas, and he is going to pick up 6 less than you. So if the standings stay as is, I think he'd be about a point behind Alexander Dimas.
Yeah, we'll try to beat him next week. So need to win as much as possible, you know.
And so the target is set. So the next week is similar. How are you feeling about that track? I guess that's the last thing from me as we look forward.
I quite like Imola to be fair. It's really good track for me, so we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Well, great to hear from you, mate. So, as Myth said, you are the lucky person to not only be our only multiple race winner in this league so far, but to have 3 out of the 6 wins pending stewards of this season. So, it shows that the pace is definitely on tap. Championship could definitely be on the cards, and hopefully we'll catch you in this commentary box next week, mate.
Yeah. Cheers. Bye bye.
So that was, of course, our race winner. And with that, I think it's only fair we just continue on the bounce. We've got Sven Schumacher also waiting for us. And there he is. If he's going to mute and undeafen. There we go. So, Mr. Sven Schumacher, how are we feeling about our performance today, my friend? Of course, good job out there today. Really good result. What were you aiming for this race?
To be really honest, for the win. Otherwise, I wouldn't compete. But yeah, I just have a bit of mixed feelings. Of course, I really wanted to win. But still, P2, good points for the championship after some incident at Bahrain and Austria. So yeah, it's fine. Let's just keep this momentum going, and we will see where we end up.
Okay, well, certainly made a good job out of today. I mean, is Suzuka a strong or a weak track for you, would you say?
To be honest, I would say I like to drive here, so strong track. But yeah, every track I really like to drive. I'm prepared to put the effort in, and then it becomes a good track for me. So yes.
Nice. That's the kind of attitude you really want. Is that, okay, maybe you'd say haven't got particular proficiency, but willing to put the effort in, willing to work for it. That's the mindset we want. I mean, of course, we had the pleasure of watching you battle for nearly half the race. So, of course, I want to talk about some of the moves out on track. Also battling for several laps with the likes of Sprogius and to an extent Dimas. When it came to tyre strategy, though, I was quite curious because I think that everyone thought you were going to go for the hards instead of the medium. So did you have like a premeditated strategy going in, or were you just like reacting more to the field?
No, I didn't have an engineer, so I just went for the mediums, as I already decided that before the race. Because I saw, I believe Lange won yesterday on those compound of tires, so that was my decision.
Well, then, for the best, if nothing else. That's fair enough. And it certainly worked out well for you here. So, I guess to say, before I hand it off to Myth for any questions from him, this hopefully should be the start of some good momentum, right? But how are you feeling on Imola?
To be really honest, I haven't driven there since, I believe, last game, also PSGL. Currently, I think that's almost a year ago. So we will see how it goes. I hope there's no big RNG in there. So yeah, if there's not, I'm gonna enjoy driving there, and we'll see what I can do.
All right, so if we look at your results for now, then Swen, so this is the second podium that you've picked up after previously picking up a third position over in, that was Qatar. Now a second place, so just one away from the top step. We saw a lot of battling with you at the end. Were you expecting Rayot's Progress to go for such a dive in the final lap? Were you trying to cover that, or can you take us through what went through your mind at that final lap?
Well, everything went to plan. Of course, it would have been more ideal to stay ahead for the last lap. But he just got more ERS and I just turned it off, let him go for turn 1. Then I wanted to stay behind him. Then the first corner I believe it was sector 2. He made a mistake, so I thought, now this is my chance. I have really a chance of winning here. And then coming into the 2 fast left-handers, I locked the front tires, so it just braked just a little, which cost me the win. So that was unfortunate, and I was closing and closing and closing at the final stage of the race, the final straight. But I'm not someone who does an extreme dive from 3 tenths behind, so I just was thinking about the championship, and yeah, that's basically P2.
All right, and if we look a little bit further on the calendar, my final question for you then, there of course are still 2 rounds for which the tracks have yet to be announced, so round 11 and round 12. If you were to pick those tracks, which tracks would you like to see?
The Netherlands, of course, my home track. I like to drive there, so that's good. Is Abu Dhabi already on the calendar? Just
No.
as a season final would be cool to have something around there.
Well, I'd love to see Zandvoort as well. I'm not sure how much Sapi is going to enjoy that with all the Dutch corner names. Of course, it'll be a bit easier for me to pronounce as well. But would that also be your favorite track, or what is your favorite track?
Whoa, it's a really question there. I think Zandvoort, just the atmosphere there when you see a lot of orange, even the curbs are orange. So I think, yeah, that's just my favorite track at the moment. We also had the social race there, and I think my pace was decent. So I really like Zandvoort.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll be able to see you back into the commentary boxes in the next couple of races, perhaps in Belgium. That's a near home race for you as well then. And if everything goes according to plan, we might even see you next week when we're in Imola. Good luck.
See you then.
Lovely. So we got one more person to talk to, and that is going to Emas. So another driver who is near the top flight of the standings and went on a little bit of a redemption arc here today. So we do have him here. So Alexander Dimas, P3 in the standings. Amazing job out there today. What were your goals heading into the Japanese Grand Prix?
Top 3. Simple as that.
Oh, you did it.
Yeah, I
Simple,
did it.
Straight to the
I
point.
mean,
Look,
yeah.
top 3, got top 3.
yeah. I mean, it's just important to stay consistent throughout the season. Like, yeah, the rest doesn't matter. Like, if you go outside the top 3, it will less be likely to win the season, of course. But just stay in the top 3 all the time and be consistent. I'm happy with it. My quali was also really good, what I didn't expect. I expected a 0.8, but not like a 0.7 or something. Because, yeah, it's just insane.
A great job out there today, and for sure, I think maybe say quali would have been a bit of an omen, so because that 0.7 was kind of not out of nowhere. You certainly showed that you had a really good quali pace, and that translated well to the race here. And I think it's a good point. Consistency is important. Short of last race where you did get it on pole and the win on the track. Unfortunately, stewards came through and moved that down a few pegs. That consistency has been showing for you, so I take it you're gunning for the championship, just like many of our other top runners, because now I think you are going to be, with Milan Meyer's result, you are going to be in the lead in points.
Yeah, yeah. The season is still long. I mean, you can be now in the lead and at the end in P5. So just need to stay consistent every week. That's most important. And then you will finish in the top 3 surely. And just me getting my quali good, because I know I'm a bit worse in the race. I need to figure that out. But yeah, if you just stay good in the quali, I will be happy with that. And of course in the race top 3, that's always my goal. The win is of course a bonus. So today I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah.
I take it you're echoing similar sentiment with Imola next week, right? I mean, we heard from the previous driver in the box, Sven Schumacher, that he reportedly hadn't touched Imola since the previous game, since F122. Have you had a bit more practice on Imola, or is it going to be a similar story? You're going to be grinding out the practice?
No, I literally didn't. I literally didn't touch the car in Imola also. So we will need to see that. But with the new handling model, it will be great, better than last year, of course. So we will see about that. Just need to get the quality right and the top 3 in the race, and I will be happy with that. And yeah, that's it really.
Solid, simple, straightforward, top 3. You got it here. Aiming for it next week. Awesome to hear. What I say, always love to hear from you, mate, and good to see you being a regular appearance in the box. Anything from you, Myth?
Yeah, I think it was last week that you mentioned that this week around you were going to have an engineer by your side. This time for the race, you decided to go from soft to hards, and that seemed to give you a little bit of a pace advantage towards the end of the race. How do you think your strategy played out?
Oh, it went really well. I went to soft to hard, of course, yes. And I was surprised actually that people went on mediums, because the mediums are dying at the end, literally. But I mean, just my ERS and stuff were too low to fight with them. And you can't really overtake, and Sproggy played a very nice game before the last lap. And on the straight he just overtook and kept the lead. I think I needed to stay in P2 to be honest, and then overtake in P1, and then I would have had a chance. So yeah, track positions was really important on this track. So yeah, I needed to play that better, but for the rest, I'm pretty happy with it. And the strategy went really well. Just everything went really well. I felt pretty good. Just ERS management was a bit worse than the others, I think. So
All right.
I couldn't fight. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if we're quickly going to go back to the last race, we of course, well, we heard later on that some penalties were applied. Can you give us a little bit more insight into that? What exactly happened there?
Yeah, after the safety car restart, I was on the tail of Sprogis, and in the first corner, in my opinion, he braked a bit too early, like 150 meters, I think, or 100 before the 100 meter. And normally you will brake after 100 meters, but yeah, that's just my opinion on it. I mean, the steward decided. I hit him, and then he went a bit wide. But yeah, I can't do anything about that. It's not my decision to make. So we'll leave that behind. So yeah, that's really.
Okay. Well, in the end, for now, if the results stay as is, if our calculations are correct, that would mean that you are going to take over the lead in the driver's standings, going to be moving 1 point ahead of Richard's progress. So looks like the battle is really heating up between you two. But as a final question, who are your main competitors this season?
Sprogis. Only Sprogis. He's only winning. He's only winning every. Sometimes he got 3 wins already, I think. And I'm still battling for a podium. So yeah, need to work on that. And yeah, no penalties, I think, this race.
All right. Well, I think that rounds it off from my end. Do you have anything more to add, Sapitron?
Other than I wish you the best of luck in Imola, my friend. So I think you, like many others, are having the all collective moment of I better get on the practice, because yeah, not a lot of people have touched it since the last game. so fairly late on in the league calendars. So I'm looking forward to see how we do in Imola. Hopefully we'll see you in the comms box for an interview again.
Yes, I hope so as well. Thanks for the comments, guys.
There we are. So that was a chance to talk to our top 3 finishers of this round. And of course, looking forward to the following rounds. We have next round at Imola. And I love this track. I love this track so much. Not to get too personal with it, but it is always a highlight for me to see Imola on the calendar. Ever since it got like put into the main rotation of league races. It's always been a mainstay for me personally. It's always produced great action, and it never fails to impress in terms of some of the driving heroics and some of the action on track. So I'm certainly looking forward to it. What about you?
Yeah, it's such a great track to drive, especially the first sector going through Variante, Tamburello, and Villeneuve. There's so much speed that you can carry through there. Of course, down at turn 9, I believe it is, Piratella, you have to be a little bit careful not to pick up any track limits there. The only area really where you can pick those up. And then the all iconic Acra Minerale, we have to go down a little bit, and when you go through the dip, move up again the track again before rounding off the second sector. It's an amazing track. I'm very happy to see it's back on the calendar. Only too bad that it was cancelled out this year because of the extreme floodings that we had. So it did not appear in the F123 calendar, but of course it does appear on our calendar here at PSGL. But the question for next week is going to be, will we see some rain? Will we see some intermediates? Is it going to be a dry race again? Regardless of, I think it's going to be a very, very exciting race.
We can only speculate and we can only wait and hope to see what the future brings. But for now, that is going to be us signing off from the crew here at PCF4. And before we sign off, I just want to say congratulations to all our drivers, everyone driving. Massive thanks to the whole team involved, including you, Myth, here with me in the commentary box. I know we had our issues earlier trying to get you in a quali, but we sorted it in the end. It's always good to have you here. So that's going to be all from us. Make sure to check out our partners as well, in particular GT Omega. Use code PSGL for a healthy discount, and we will see you next week out in Imola. Take care, folks. It's been great. See you next time.
He's got the inside, all here is through, on the left-hand side, hooks the apex, gets all the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Opmeer now, to the last couple of corners now, his finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium. Once again, the GOAT is back. Jarno Opmeer wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix. Started climbing my pole, she got me locked in on cup though. Cocaine in my